These plants you see in here are Swiss chard. They've come out of my window grow light situation, and I have put them in here so that they can get acclimated to, I don't know, a temperature shift, a light shift. In this container, I can take it out to the cold frame or the greenhouse during the day and then bring it back inside at night while it's just kind of getting caught up. I'm going to be watching the temperatures at night out in the greenhouse to see when I think I can leave them out there, and that will be when the hotbed has peaked at about 150 degrees. A lot of times it'll get even hotter than that, but when it comes back down and hits 150 and then starts to go down a little bit more, that's when I'll leave it out all night. Okay, so at the last place, somebody wrote on a door that there were copperheads inside a closet, so now the girls don't want to go see any of the houses. Come on, kiddo, don't be a wanny. So it's pretty flat. The house is on top of, kind of on top of the hill. It's not at least at the bottom of the hill. It doesn't look very fancy. I know this doesn't look very fancy, but the inside looks really nice. And it looks like they have some fences. Ooh, the ground is quite soggy. And it doesn't look like they have actual grass growing. It's something else. But the fences look like they're in good shape. So the tin has come off, but it doesn't look like the wood is bad. And it looks like in some spots they put new tin up. So yeah, these were actual like horse stables. Oh my. Oh, a man cave. Okay, so there it looks like they've got a man cave in here. I would bet that what happened was the previous first owner had horses, and then the second owner came out and just used it as storage, and they had some kind of a really big wind that came and tore the tin up, like maybe it wasn't real quality tin, or they didn't have it attached with the right screws. It looks like they just used nails, so that does let things come up. Wow, the ground is really, really wet. Lots of grasshoppers. And then it looks like they have a smaller fence here for like kids to play at behind the house. And a little shed and a little deck. So the shed it doesn't look like the shed is actually as bad as how it looks. It's just that it didn't maybe necessarily have the tin connected as well as it needed to be. Okay, so we've been several other places today and none of the ground has been this soggy. And they've got standing water. They've got standing water next to the house, which is not good. So we'll go look at the inside. Are we able to get in?
What do you think so far?
They have a man cave in the barn, and the barn is not structurally unsound, it's just a tin. They have a legitimate closed-in man cave.
Undercarriage, which is pretty sturdy.
I like this a lot.
I like this a lot so far.
Were you copying me?
I was copying you.
Wood fire,
It's, the bathroom is not beautiful.
Whoa. Hey, honey.
Yeah.
Look at the kitchen tile.
Yeah, it's so familiar. It also looks like they built their own counter.
Does this look familiar?
Yes, it does.
So the worst thing about buying a double wide is that their heat and air systems are, they're just awful, and it's the original one it looks like in there. The A coil is just exposed to the element. There's no compartment or anything that
Really? Okay.
keeps it enclosed.
Okay.
So, I like the filter system.
So it looks like a second owner came in and built cupboards and did some other things, but didn't
I
quite
think
get
you're right.
finished.
It's something.
Yeah, so there's your furnace and there's your A coil, and your filter is this here that's just laying on top of this.
Okay.
it is, but that's typical, that's what we see in manufactured homes. You do good.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the last owner was a carpenter, but not a plumber, because the bathrooms are the only thing that haven't been redone.
Really?
Yeah. They redid the floors, they put new cabinets in, but the bathrooms are kinda,
So we have.
Floors are gorgeous in the trim.
yeah, they're doing a pretty job.
We have.
And how much was this one, and how much was the acreage?
This one is 170,000 for 13 acres.
Oh, so what I saw back there wasn't what I thought I was looking at. I thought I was looking at like 2 acres. So I wonder how far, so that includes the trees on this side and then the property out back.
She's gonna know the lot lines and find out.
Okay, so we're
Oh my.
we're pulled into the,
Oh.
here we go,
Oh,
we're in
it's
this circle
all-
drive.
Oh, so it looks like. Oh, I was gonna say
Everything
we
on
own
the other
church,
side
but
of the
Never mind, we
trees.
don't own the church. It's the.
No, you don't own the church.
Okay, I'm gonna look at that again. Okay, so it's this little wood. I'm tempted to walk through there, but it just looks kind of gross. That's a lot of property. So it's not the house we would be buying, it would be the property. Most of these little saplings would need to come out because they're destroying the fence. And we wouldn't be able to get a straight line in with the trees here, so usually what you do is you come in and you cut down all the weaker trees and let the stronger, bigger ones get bigger. So it's a lot of property, but everything here as well. All that, all the way up to the church. And so you could cut your own hay or have it hired out. That's what my dad did back home. He would grow the hay, and instead of owning all the haying equipment, he would trade or pay someone to come in and cut the hay for him and bale it so that he didn't have to own the equipment. The hard thing about that is that if you don't have very much acreage, you get put at the bottom of the list. And so when it's the best time to be haying, your hay sits there in the field and waits while the bigger boys get theirs done. And then they come to yours, but your hay may be worthless by that time. For instance, if it rained. The ground is very muddy and bare. It doesn't look like it's had a huge amount of grass growing on it, which is kind of an issue. Back home, we had soil very much like this, to where there wasn't enough topsoil that had fertility in it for the grass to grow right. They've got grass, they've got trees. Okay, so there's a little bit of a fence right there. I don't know what kind of shape it's in. But it goes like where those grandstands, or that white, can you see that? See that white thing right there? It goes back to there, if I'm reading it correctly. And that's a lot of fence to keep maintained. And they've even got trees. They've got trees growing inside the barn. And I wonder if it's like, doesn't necessarily look like pigs, but maybe deer. They've got hoof prints back here. Ah, it's so soggy. So on a property this size, we could have cows and horses and llamas. Oh my, we could have pretty much everything. But the expense is going to be, how good are the fences? What do you have to take down? What do you have to fix in order to make it usable? Now, the last house that we purchased, our homestead in Idaho, we loved the house, and we bought it in winter when the land was under 2 feet of snow. Everything was completely frozen. We could not see the property. We didn't know if it was flat. We didn't know if it was rocky. And we couldn't even see the fences because that winter the snow had blown up over the top of the chain link fence. So you've got like a 5-foot chain link fence. Well, the snow had come a foot over that in the backyard in our last homestead. So we bought it. Fast forward 6 years later, after having put huge amounts of time, energy, sweat, blood, tears into that property, because we didn't see that it wasn't flat. We did not see how many rocks there were. We did not see that we didn't have topsoil when we bought that property. We just thought it was the right size. It was the perfect price. It was a price we could really afford. And we knew that the one thing I was careful of was that we would have irrigation water. So I won on that one, but making that land productive was horrifying. It was horrifying. We spent so much money trying to figure it out because it wasn't flat, and the cost of having somebody come out and flatten it. There was a basement in the backyard that we didn't see that had trash in it, and it would have cost us a lot of money to have somebody come in and dig out that basement and clear out the trash. And because of the cost, we never got around to it. We just left that basement there. So the reason that I come in, if you're just buying a house, buy it for the house. If you're buying it for homesteading, you want to pay attention to what that soil is doing. You want to pay attention to what critters you're seeing around. You want to see that, for one, we saw deer, and in some places in Oklahoma and Texas, they have wild pigs. So I was trying to figure out, are those pig prints or are those deer prints? The other thing was grasshoppers. We went out and looked at this house in December, and there was a swarm of baby grasshoppers, which means that anything you wanted to grow out there, unless your chickens could really keep up with that many grasshoppers, you were going to lose your crop, your garden, your whatever, to grasshoppers. So even though you could look down and say, well, chickens will take care of that, it's not. You're just noticing. Your first trip out is just noticing what the characteristics of the property are. What's your knee-jerk reaction to it? My other knee-jerk reaction to it was that it was very soggy. We had been out to see many places that day. I think we saw 5 properties total that day, and this one was the soggiest. It was the biggest piece of property. It had good slope, so it should have been draining just fine, but the ground, you were sinking in 6 inches down underneath the sod. And so in this area, you get potholes and you get sinkholes and things like that. So that's what we looked at for this property. It was 13 acres. It had a few fences, but most of those fences had a tree or several trees fall down on top of the fence. The treed areas had not been taken care of, so there were lots of little saplings coming up that were kind of impeding the health of the rest of the trees. So all those saplings would have needed to be taken down. There would probably be some vines in there that needed to be taken down, possible poison ivy. So I think that any time in this area that you're going to be doing a lot of that overhauling, it's good to do it this time of year, because then you're not fighting snakes, you're not fighting ticks, and you're not fighting poison ivy. Everything is asleep. And so it's a good time of year to do that. I'm running out of that kind of time, and so if we were to purchase soon, those parts of the land would have to go uncared for until next winter. I don't think I would get around to it in time to get all that finished. The other thing is, with a piece of property this big, I would need to have some large equipment. I wouldn't have enough animals to keep it grazed, so I would need large equipment to be able to mow it down. You do need to keep it mowed in order to have it not be a fire hazard, and if you're going to have animals and kids out in those spots, you need to keep it mowed so that you're not having problems with snakes. And then the big pasture, the big hay field on the side, would need to be mowed and baled in order to be usable by us. So even though the property was big and it had a lot going for it, the size itself brings on its own expenses. You have to have equipment, or you have to have a neighbor who has equipment that you can pay or trade with in order to be able to keep the property maintained. And having done that with 1.5 acres, which to those of you who have 1.5 acres, unless you're planting it intensively, it doesn't sound like that much land. But if you're planting intensively and it's you're keeping things rotated, it is actually quite a bit of work for 1.5 acres, and you can grow a lot of food on that much property if you have the right resources. So at least in my opinion, I'd rather have something smaller and spend a little more money on things like feed than have something bigger and spend a lot more money on equipment. So I thought the inside of this house was charming. It was super cute. He'd done a really good job on it. If the bathrooms had been updated as well and been a little bit nicer, a little bit cleaner, we might have just jumped on this property. But bathrooms and plumbing are a big deal for me. If I have to have a bathroom in the house, I want it to be really, really functional and easy to keep clean. Otherwise, I want an outhouse. So I hope you enjoyed this series, and we have so many more to show you. So many more. I'm so far behind on my videos, but we do have 2 houses that we are really, really in love with. We don't know if we'll be able to make an offer on them because of timing issues, but hopefully we'll get there soon. I think I have 3 more videos to show you before we show you the one that we absolutely love, but hopefully we'll get there. I'll talk to you later. They go with us everywhere.
Show them mine. Come on. They think my fingers are worms. We're about to
Okay,
go
but
down
don't
some.
put them in your. But don't put your finger.
After we'll have to clean their faces again, huh?
Yeah.
So are we gonna be keeping them inside where it's more
Only when
cool?
we're feeding them. Mom, why don't we have them at least inside at the nighttime? Because it is cold, really cold at the nighttime. Mom, I can't make a bed for them that isn't on my bed that won't include chairs.
Really?
I think I'll do that. That way they can be inside, on, in, up at night.
Kaya, help him.
This little one is kind of like...
Just lift him by the butt and the chest.
Okay, so we just went and got some chicks. This is a little banty chick that got hatched out in the front. And last night it was cold and not moving except just a tiny bit, so I put it back under the mom. This morning it was once again out, not moving, except for a tiny, tiny bit in the wings. It looked dead. But it was moving just enough, so I brought him in here. I mean, it looked dead. Brought him in here, put it in the oven, not the warming oven, the oven of the wood-burning stove, which is still going, and closed the door most of the way. And now he's up and moving. So that might be a trick for somebody. A baby that just needs to be warmed up a bit. So anybody who has ever raised chicks know that after a little while they start to stink. So I had a really good idea. I'm going to bring the chicks out. Because they've been under the wood-burning stove, they're accustomed to heat fluctuations rather than constant temperature that you get from a heat lamp. So I'm going to bring them out here in my greenhouse. It won't be as hot at the bottom as it is at the top, but there will be pockets that are warmer than others, like in the direct sunshine. So they've got their food and their water out here. The cats can't get in because I have the netting. And I think at night I am going to bring out a heat lamp for them so that I don't have to have them in the kitchen. And the heat lamp will not only keep the chicks warm, it will keep the plants from freezing. So I can probably at that point have my tomato plants out here. So I thought that was a great way to kind of dual purpose things. And they can sit out here and eat the grass. Don't they look happy? So excited. I'm just going to have to be really careful when I walk around in here because they kind of blend into everything. I have for my feeder chicks, the ones that we're going to butcher, I have some hay cubes in there because they can't get to grass. I have all the scraps from in the house. I have crushed eggshells from the eggshells I do in the mortar and pestle. What else? And then I cracked corn. My animals do not like corn, and so I have to crack it for them if I want them to eat it. I'm out of wheat right now. They prefer wheat. And that's what and then I milk, if I have extra milk, which I do always. Like, I just milked Athena, and she gave me about half a gallon. So I put about a third a cup of vinegar, white vinegar, in it to curd the milk, and then I pour the milk in, and it just gives them some extra protein. And that is what I feed them. And they actually look pretty good. We would like them to be out free range, but because they're still young and light, I'm afraid they could make it over the neighbor's fence, and they have a garden that I really don't want them destroying. So they are just stuck in here right now. They can get up and move, and they have the big, the huge dog kennel for them. But I really would like it if they could be free range. It's just not something that can happen right now. We'd have to go spend a lot of money on fencing and clip wings again, and I've got too much going on to be able to do that. That and they're roosters, and they're almost to the point where they would start bullying the hens, and we've already got one rooster to bully the hens, so I don't really want a whole bunch. I don't want 14 roosters out there chasing my hens, so they'll probably end up staying in here. And I mean, look at them, they look super healthy, nothing wrong with them. So I don't think that this is necessarily a bad way to do it. I think I will probably be extending their cage in a little bit, at least to give them some more room to spar in, if nothing else. I wanted to show you the comparison between my roasters. So the biggest ones have been the gold sex lynx roosters. These ones with the little bit of orange on their wings. They are significantly bigger than the Rhode Island Reds. And I have one, Araucana, my little gray one here. He is half the size of everybody else, but you can look at the comparison between the Rhode Island Reds, and the white sex lynx.